didn't get the notice.
What notice?
See, that's what burned my ass right to the bone.
Well, see, I got a letter when I was in prison, like, yo, you know, we'll send a limo for you, da 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 da.
A warrior stepped out from the harshest martial arts arena on the planet with 5 national gold medals. A living weapon that even Chuck Norris had to bow to in respect. That is Jet Li. But that was only what the world praised before another name appeared, DMX. And then, history began to rewrite itself. One sentence, one collision. And just a few months after filming, doctors issued an ultimatum to Jet Li: 1. Stop doing action scenes immediately. 2. Prepare for a life in a wheelchair. What forced the most disciplined star in Asia to endure such brutal impacts? What really happened behind the scenes of Cradle 2, The Grave? And why do the people who were there still avoid answering? Do not look away. The truth that has been locked away for more than 2 decades is about to surface, and it is powerful enough to make your heart jump out of your chest instantly. Jet Li, the martial arts legend and the backstage nightmare. In Hollywood, some actors learn martial arts to act in films. And then there is one man who made all of Hollywood relearn the meaning of martial arts. Jet Li was born in 1963, began training wushu at 8 and long, before many actors even knew what technique meant. Jet Li accomplished something no one in the history of China ever repeated. He won the national championship 5 times in a row before turning 18. Yes, you heard that right. Not the junior league, not the amateur division. The national championship where fully grown elite athletes competed. And a 15-16-year-old boy dominated them. It remains a feat still considered an unreproducible legend. Hollywood knew that, and Hollywood respected that. In the martial arts world, Jet Li was placed alongside Jackie Chan for speed, but his precision was so extreme that cameras could not even catch it in time. Stuntmen described Jet Li moves so fast, we have to shoot at high speed just to see the strikes clearly. Another said, he never misses a beat. Jet Li possessed 3 things Hollywood martial arts experts rarely had: all at once real speed, absolute control, and explosive inner power. No one could fake that with CGI or editing. That is why when Jet Li fought, no actor dared improvise. And that is also why Steven Seagal, despite his power pose style, was never considered on the same technical level as Jet Li. But alongside that, perfection was a darker side. Jet Li unintentionally turned many people into unwilling victims. Not to the point of broken bones, but bruises and mild dizziness were as common as daily meals. Even in Hollywood, where safety is top priority, Jet Li still left unforgettable marks. In Lethal Weapon 4, he performed a lock and slam onto a table that sent a stuntman to the hospital because he could not breathe. Co-star Jason Statham also once took a full kick because he could not react to Jet in time. Jason Statham, the toughest fighter in British action cinema, still had to admit Jet Li is so precise, you need 200% focus if you do not want to take a real hit. No one was skilled enough to double for him. Hong Kong media even recorded in the early 1990s that Jet Li had once fought a real-life aggressor and won decisively. The question, who is the king of martial arts, consumed countless pages across Asia. But to insiders, the answer never changed Jet Li. A star too big, too cold, too difficult to challenge. No one dared collide with that wall, except one man, DMX. And that is when things became interesting. The secret file of Cradle 2, The Grave. The unreleased training session. DMX was not just a rapper at that time. He was entering a phase where Hollywood was beginning to give him a chance. His hits caught the eyes of producers, and slowly DMX obtained something most rappers of that era could barely dream of: an acting career opening before him. DMX had begun taking roles. One of his biggest roles then was in Cradle 2, The Grave, and this film happened to pair him with Jet Li. Cradle 2, The Grave was a bold experiment putting Jet Li's refined martial arts against street-born instincts from Yonkers. 2 frequencies that did not belong in the same solar system. The director called it a fascinating risk. The stunt team looked at each other like they were counting down to an accident. Before filming started, Jet Li had already heard the warning. In the stunt community, there was a story from Exit Wounds: DMX had collided with Steven Seagal, causing Seagal to stop filming for 2 weeks. No one knew if it was true, but the story spread like breaking news inside a prison block. Nobody confirms it, but everyone repeats it. When Jet Li arrived for the first meeting, a crew member even pulled him aside. X is unpredictable. He doesn't follow anyone's rhythm. Jet Li knew it all. To the crew, Jet Li was the one person they never had to worry about, always early rehearsing each motion carefully, never improvising recklessly. If Jet Li felt a fight scene was unsafe, the entire set adjusted. DMX was the opposite extreme. His schedule depended on his mood. Late as a biological habit. For a call time at 5:30 a.m., Jet Li was already in position at 5:10, breathing steadily, like preparing for an ancient martial ritual. DMX showed up nearly 3 hours later, holding a coffee in one hand and driving a new RC car with the other, like an 8-year-old showing off his toy on the first day of school. The crew looked at that scene like they were about to cry. Not because they were angry at DMX, but because everyone had to wait for him to finish playing, so they could start their workday. How childish was it? Childish enough for his remote helicopter to buzz above the lighting crew. Childish enough for the RC car to drift around the parking lot and terrify security. Childish enough for a scene scheduled at 7 to be pushed to 11. Some days he rode an ATV around the studio, and security had to chase him like they were auditioning for a behind-the-scenes Fast and Furious. And the person who took the biggest emotional hit was not the director, not the producers. It was Jet Li. That delay pushed the shooting schedule back, and he missed his flight to Hong Kong for his wife's birthday, a trip he had never once missed in many years. That was also when the crew began noticing something no one dared say earlier. In some leg sweep scenes, Jet Li went harder than usual. Some hip rotations were not in the original choreography. Some sweeps made the stunt team scream out loud. After several sessions, DMX showed up with bruises along his arm and a small tear near his rib. He laughed it off, saying it's action training. But insiders knew Jet Li never hurt people, unless he wanted them to feel a boundary. Which boundary? Respect discipline. Or a reminder that not everyone could enter Jet Li's rhythm. A mistimed slip. Or a calculated hit. Then the rumor reached its boiling point when DMX returned to set after a few days absent. The next scene was a simple exchange: Jet Li on the left side of the frame, DMX charging from the right, all mapped out in the choreography. Nothing complex, nothing dangerous, at least on paper. But DMX chose to go raw. No double, no pulling force, no adherence to the safety rhythm Jet Li required from all co-stars. And on the final exchange, as the camera rolled smoothly like water, DMX threw a punch far stronger than planned straight into Jet Li's leg, the very leg that had suffered a severe injury back in 1981. Jet Li collapsed instantly. The entire set froze. The scene stopped immediately. Jet Li stepped back one beat, his face draining of color like steel losing heat, while DMX stood still, shoulders raised, breathing hard like he had thrown the whole Bronx into that punch. No one said it out loud, but among the witnesses, the story spread faster than a Black Friday discount rumor. X just paid Jet back. And that punch triggered the worst-case scenario. The old injury flared up again, bad enough that the whole schedule had to be pushed back. The consequences went even further. Jet Li's longtime doctor, the one who had followed him since Kiss of the Dragon, looked at the X-ray and said the one sentence every stunt performer fears: you must choose one of two things: continue doing action, or prepare for the possibility of spending life in a wheelchair. Hollywood had never heard that warning for an A-list star. But Jet Li was different. He carried decades of performing his own dangerous stunts. And DMX's punch, intentional or not, hit the one weakness Jet Li had always hidden from the camera. No one knows if that strike was an accident or a moment of unchecked instinct. No one has footage to confirm it. But the incident became the perfect puzzle piece for the internet to build a full Hollywood revenge narrative. But to understand why real fans believed DMX was wild enough, reckless enough, instinctive enough to do it, we must open his darkest file. The Wild Portrait of DMX, a series of crazy legends. DMX was nature's contradiction, instinctive, feral, and unpredictable. Like opening your garage early in the morning and seeing a pit bull holding your neighbor's chain in its mouth with no explanation of where it came from. And the bitter truth. No one would doubt the story if the dog's owner was DMX, because what others call rumors, exaggerations, scare tales, were the real-life version of him. No filter, no director, no TMZ editing required. Only DMX raw, abrasive, and full of flickering electrical currents no psychologist would want to touch. The taxi story is the most classic example. In DMX's eyes, a taxi was not a transportation service. It was the universe's moral test. He stepped out of the car and walked away, like he had just received a bonus gift for buying an album at Tower Records. Swizz Beatz, his younger brother figure, who always tried to play the system stabilizer, ran after the taxi to pay. And in the moment Swizz reached for his wallet, DMX turned back with a look that said, "You're ruining my vibe." It was not normal anger. It was the look of a hunting dog noticing someone trying to snatch the bone from its mouth, a soft warning, but strong enough for Swizz to feel gunpowder in the air. When Swizz glanced at the front seat and saw the gun, his life instantly switched into survival mode. They left the taxi in a silence as thick as gasoline fumes. No one spoke, no questions asked, because for DMX chaos was not an event. It was the room's default temperature. If the taxi incident was just the appetizer, then the Def Jam Mercedes story was the main course. One sunny afternoon, DMX saw the Mercedes belonging to Michael Kaiser, a senior Def Jam executive, and decided life was too short not to experience driving it. No license, no permission. No bro, I'm borrowing this real quick. DMX simply drove off as if the car had chosen a new owner. When the police stopped him, his answer was simple, sharp and extremely DMX. "It's not my car." And strangely, the police let him go. Not because DMX had a great lawyer, but because he was with Ja Rule, and seeing those two names together made the entire precinct collectively decide we should not dig deeper into this. But the part that proved DMX was different came afterward. Instead of calling a taxi, he hitchhiked a random vehicle. And suddenly, the whole block turned into a small East Coast party. No one knew what the crime was at the start. No one knew what the ending was. But they remembered one thing: DMX turned every piece of chaos into a collective memory. Then came the razor blade under the tongue. That phrase alone made many rappers swallow hard. Aries Spears. The comedian only wanted DMX to endorse a CD. He expected a handshake at most. But DMX pulled Aries into a dim locker room where 27 men stood around like an initiation ritual for a secret Bronx society. DMX asked, "You mocking my voice?" Before Aries could answer, DMX slid a razor blade from under his tongue. Quick, light, and cold, as a lab switch being flipped. No one knows where he learned that skill. They only know Aries walked out with a face as pale as uncured cement, and the entire comedy community quietly agreed no one should impersonate DMX, not even as a joke. But no story reflects DMX's essence better than the robbery by dog motif, his street trademark. DMX did not need guns, did not need threats. He only needed Boomer or any pit bull he had. Jermaine Dupri recalled a Source magazine reporter getting robbed clean by DMX using a dog. Jadakiss called it the dog robbery era, the period when DMX and his dog were the legendary snatch-and-grab duo of Yonkers. Tashera Simmons, DMX's ex-wife, said X was only 11 when he used a dog to snatch an old lady's purse. Everyone recognized it was wrong, but it reflected a truth DMX grew up, where you needed sharp fangs just to survive. Fat Joe once became an unwilling witness. After a show at a gas station, DMX saw someone wearing a bright chain. One look, one step, one light tug like shifting flow between two verses. The man lost his chain. It happened so fast, Fat Joe could only sigh. That's DMX for you. Fans added their own tale from New Jersey. A man claimed DMX took $3,200 USD after one of his guys flashed a gun. Part of it was caught on camera. DMX denied it. Police did not prosecute. The story lived on like an early internet meme. No one knew if it was true, false, or exaggerated, but everyone felt it fit DMX perfectly. What is scary is that all these stories, which sound like scripts from an urban crime film, were completely aligned with DMX's persona. They matched the way he rapped, walked, laughed, growled, what on stage. DMX did not play the role of a madman. He lived as one. He was the stray dog sprinting through the night, leaving people guessing how many neighborhoods he'd passed. The leaking wire in an old house always hissing, but no one knew when it would blow. The flame people wanted to warm their hands over, but feared being burned. And because of that raw chaos, Hollywood was never surprised that fans believed DMX was wild enough, reckless enough, and unhinged enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with Jet Li, the man every stunt professional treated as the embodiment of precision and discipline. Two opposite poles, two forces pushing in reverse directions. One was a blade sharpened through meditation. One was a flare gun fired into the Bronx night. When those worlds collided in the Cradle 2, the grave training room, the community could not help but ask, would X really dare hit back at Jet Li? And if you think these stories were already insane, then prepare yourself. Because the biggest incident of DMX's life, the JFK Airport incident of 2004, goes far beyond every rumor you have ever heard. The biggest incident, JFK Airport 2004. If you want to understand why the rumored DMX dared to push back against Jet Li survived like a street legend, you only need to look at the chaotic night at JFK Airport in 2004. It was not an accident, not a sudden outburst, not a typical Hollywood scandal like drunken misbehavior. It was an action scene, without a director calling action, without stunt doubles, without script, without choreography. Only DMX at his most unfiltered, wild, explosive, and flying off every track normal people consider logical. DMX was at the peak of fame then. Albums selling, shows sold out. His name charted as if carved there. Everyone assumed it was the moment he would stabilize, mature, settle down like many rappers once they reached success. But DMX was never the type to listen to the world. He lived like a leaking power line, always sizzling. And at JFK that night, that power line sparked its biggest fire. Everything began when DMX impersonated a federal agent. Not a joke. Not an early YouTube-style prank. Not a stray sentence shouted in frustration. DMX stood in an airport in front of dozens of witnesses and declared himself a federal agent. His voice was sharp like a pit bull's bite. No one dared challenge him. No one knew the reason. No one understood the motive. They only knew X always had a strange ability to make people believe things no one would normally verify. Then DMX rammed his SUV straight into a security barrier. A hard, decisive hit, as if the barrier were a studio prop instead of federal property. People heard the boom and froze like they were watching a raw cut of Fast and Furious. But DMX did not stop. He stepped out and attempted to pull a driver out of their car. Police later labeled it attempted carjacking. But with DMX, no one knew what he was thinking. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe paranoia. Maybe it was simply DMX living as he always did. No brakes, no thoughts, no fear of consequences. And when the police arrived, DMX did not run, did not posture, did not negotiate. He stood there as if this was just another Cradle 2, the grave scene. Except Jet Li was not there to counterbalance him. But the real counterweight was inside his SUV. When officers searched the vehicle, they instinctively stepped back. What they found was not props from an action film, not fake items rappers carry for image. Inside DMX's SUV were crack diazepam, oxycodone, and a billy club, the actual police baton. Not something you keep for safety. It felt like a fragment of the street life DMX never fully left, even while living at the top of showbiz. The charge list police wrote down was so long, it read like a criminal movie poster impersonating a federal officer: drug possession, weapons possession, menacing endangerment, DUI, all in one night. DMX genuinely confused New York's legal system. Because he did not have one major offense, he had a combo, a sequence, a 5-in-1 chaos bundle even hardened street figures rarely encounter. And the strangest part, DMX did not look scared, did not panic, did not break down. He stood there like this was just his life, as if he had always lived through impact events like this. Part of him had grown up in a world where danger was the only stable thing. To everyone else, it was a disaster. To DMX, it was a bad night. The court gave DMX a suspended sentence in 2004. People thought it was over. But DMX never stopped at part one of any story. In 2005, he violated parole. Then he was sued by Sergey, the man involved in the incident, for $4 million USD, later reduced to $240,000. A large sum, but tiny compared to the real cost DMX's public image, his reputation, and Hollywood's trust. Because the JFK incident was not a slip-up. It was a milestone. Proof that DMX, even while topping billboards, still carried a storm, no one could neutralize. A rapper who could stand under stage lights, but whose heart still beat to the rhythm of streets that never sleep. Someone no PR team could tame. Someone every director viewed as fire beautiful and explosive, yet capable of burning everything if touched wrong. And when fans look at DMX's legal record, more than 30 arrests, they do not just see an artist, they see a force of nature. A man living like a wounded wild animal, fierce, tragic, unpredictable. A man who cannot be boxed in. A man who, if Jet Li ever hit him off rhythm, fans instantly believe X was crazy enough to hit back. That is why the rumor that DMX once clashed with Jet Li refuses to die. It fits too well. It matches DMX's persona perfectly. It convinces fans that if anyone in Hollywood dared test Jet Li, the man even stunt veterans fear there was only one possible name: DMX. And when you stand before DMX with a past like a chain explosion, you immediately understand why the world believes it. Because with a history like that, it is not hard to imagine DMX doing what Hollywood never dared picture, standing face to face with Jet Li and not blinking. DMX teamed up full of chaos and tragedy. Some artists are born to be loved, some are born to be understood. And then, there are people like DMX, who never belonged to either extreme. He was the kind of figure Hollywood could never tame and hip-hop could never fully hold on to. DMX stood at the crossroads of the three strongest moments in his life stream: hip-hop, the pressure of fame, and the psychological fractures rooted in the dark home where his childhood was stolen. Each force pulled in a different direction, none belongs together. And that tension created a DMX who was violent yet destructive, beautiful yet tragic, to the point where the moment he stepped into the room, everyone felt the air change. DMX came from a place where bullets were not written on paper, but on stars across skin. The volume of dogs barking at him read their buildings. He did not learn how to become a star. He learned how to survive. Hip-hop was not his career path. It was his counterattack against life. And when his debut album exploded, when his growl became part of American cultural identity, when the entire world memorized the Rough Riders anthem, DMX entered a phase where everyone believed he had finally won. But few knew that what he battled daily was not the stage, not his peers, but the darkness inside his own mind. A kind of darkness that refused to leave no matter how bright the spotlight was. That is why when audiences heard the rumor that DMX clashed with Jet Li, the story ignited instantly. Not because they believed the two actually fought, but because it made sense. It touched three emotional pressure points that anyone who grew up with hip-hop and martial arts films carried within them. The first pressure point, the cultural clash, street versus discipline. Jet Li is the perfect product of absolute discipline, like a blade forged 100 times in a furnace. DMX is the opposite, an arrow shot out of a storm, no one knowing where it will land, only knowing it will pierce something. People love placing two opposing symbols side by side in the same frame, imagining what happens if their energies collide. It is like asking what would happen if a traffic light met a Mustang flying 60 miles per hour without braking. Fans know it is imaginable, but they still want to hear it, because American culture is built on confrontations like that border facing chaos, discipline, facing instinct. The second pressure, the personality clash, wild versus control. Jet Li is restraint steady, breathing a gaze that never raises its voice but always warns. DMX is a pit bull unleashed in an arena, no one knowing the next leap. Hollywood respects Jet Li for his precision. Hip-hop worships DMX for his unfiltered truth. And when these opposites stand next to each other, even without real conflict, people imagine an explosion. It is like placing dry ice next to boiling water. You already know what happens. You do not have to see it. You instinctively believe it. The third pressure, the clash of icons. The rapper who does not bow to the biggest martial arts scene. In American psychology, Jet Li represents mastering global fame, the kind of soft power that makes the entire film. DMX represents but they never clashed. In fact, they complemented each other, one being the storm, the other, the stone. Two opposing forces creating the perfect rhythm for the film. So why does the rumor refuse to die? Because it is too enticing to let go. It is like a barroom tale. Everyone knows it is exaggerated, but no one wants the truth to ruin the fun. It taps into America's nostalgia for a time when martial arts and hip-hop were both at their peak, when Jet Li made Hollywood hold its breath, and DMX made stadiums shake. And when those two cultural giants appeared in the same frame, fans' imaginations revved like a V8 engine. They did not need truth, they needed feeling. DMX is an emblem of chaos, but he is also an emblem of pain. His lifelong personal battles turned him into a flame that was beautiful, but nearly impossible to control. He was not born to be calm. He was born to burn. That is why people believed he could stand up to Jet Li, even though he never did. That belief speaks louder than fact. It shows DMX became the kind of symbol American culture always craves, a man who never bows even before power. In the end, the DMX versus Jet Li narrative does not survive because it is true. It survives because it is too sweet to throw away. It survives because people need a story where two worlds once touched, and even without real sparks, fans created their own light. While the truth is simply mutual respect, DMX remains the perfect embodiment of chaos. Jet Li remains the measure of discipline, and the clash that never happened continues to live on as a cultural ghost no one wants to banish.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and the truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.